Wilson Family Fund, all the money. The only part that doesn't is the tax money. So if you're interested, go in there in the corner and get one or two. Whoops. All right, we're going to start a couple minutes early. I have a couple things to talk about. First off, for those of you interested in helping the Justin Wilson Family Fund, eBay started their auction last night at 6 o'clock, and they're doing the sale at no cost to anybody. They're not charging for their services, which is phenomenal, I think. And all the money will go to the family, his wife Julia, his 7-year-old daughter Jane, and his 5-year-old daughter Jessie. So we encourage you to look up eBay and see what they have and what you can purchase. I want to congratulate the Mazda Road to Indy champions that were crowned this past weekend out in Laguna Seca. The Indy Lights was won by Spencer Piggott, driving for Uncos Racing. He won $1 million, which is guaranteeing him three races, including the Indianapolis 500. The Pro Mazda was won by Santiago Urrutia from Uruguay, driving for Team Pelfrey, and he is managed by Eliseo Salazar. And the USF 2000 was won by Nick Jamin of France. He won $381,000. Santiago won $590,300 for his move up to lights. I forgot to mention that. And Nick won $381,000, moved to the Pro Mazda series. Now, I want to mention, most of you have seen me the last several months limping around here. I am in the process of solving that problem with my good friend Dr. Rob Schroeder. Dr. Rob is a chiropractor. He's up in the PitFit offices. I highly recommend, if you have pains in your shoulder, neck, back, leg, whatever it is, he can help you. And his office number is 317-388-8755. Tonight's show, the Autosportradio.com 2015 show, is brought to you by Honda. And founded in 1993 to spearhead Honda's entry into IndyCar racing, Honda Performance Development has overseen successful racing efforts at all levels of the sport, from karting and quarter midgets to IndyCar and prototype sports cars. HPD offers race engines and competition products for professional, amateur, and entry-level racers. For more information about HPD and the company's racing product lines, please visit hpd.honda.com. That's hpd.honda.com. And we also have a raffle for a victory lap for any child 9 years old and older at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You can call up or just go out there any day that there's nothing else going on and there's no rain. They are at the track. Their number is 317-243-7171, extension 101. And when you call and ask about it, mention my name and you will get the photo that they take at the end of the ride free. And we have raffle tickets for a ride. They're $5 each, 7 for $25. If you got a grandchild or a great-grandchild or somebody who'd like to take a shot, tickets are available. Talk to your waitress. Now, first off, I also want to welcome somebody here who's going to be a guest of mine in the next 4 or 5 weeks. He's a member of the International Motorsports Hall of Fame. He's probably done more to save drivers from catastrophe, fires, and injury of all sorts. And he's now into the football helmet business. Please, I want to say welcome to Mr. Bill Simpson. Now, last week I had Mike Hull here, and I said, well, we got to be able to beat that one. And we are. We have Mrs. Hull. She is a member of the board for the Dan Weldon, you don't have to do anything, so the Dan Weldon Foundation. And, of course, as everybody knows, this weekend, Saturday, is the Dan Weldon Memorial Pro-Am Karting Challenge, and it's being connected with the Justin Wilson Family Fund as well. And we're going to find out everything that's going on. So please welcome Melinda Hull. Well, did you just start on this project a couple weeks ago?
No, Don.
Oh.
Thanks for asking. We actually started at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. And what is the program for the weekend? I mean, it starts on Saturday. Is there practice and qualifying early and then da-da-da-da-da?
Yes. What actually happens is we have one professional driver and 3 amateur drivers. And starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, each person on the team gets a 20-minute session to get in the car and to practice. And the qualifying time is set by that. And then at 12:30, we have driver introductions, and it's a 2-hour endurance kart where each participant will switch out of the kart during that 2 hours, and the last stint of the race will actually be ran by all professional drivers.
How many drivers, professionals, have you got here coming in?
To date, we have 16 professional drivers.
And would we know who some of them are?
You absolutely would know who some of them are, as we have the 2015 reigning IndyCar champion, Scott Dixon, and we have the 2015 Indy Lights reigning champion, Simon Piggott, as well as Sarah Fisher, Gabby Chavez, Marco Andretti, Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon, like I said, Ed Carpenter, Sage Karam, Will Power, Jack Harvey, Jay Howard, Simon Piggott again, James Hinchcliffe, Ryan Briscoe, and Matthew Brabham, and we got Anthony Foyt Jr. to dust off his helmet and come play with us. So that'll be fun.
He put his other helmet and shoulder pads aside to come out with you?
I think you might see Colts on the cart, but he did.
This is a fundraiser, obviously, was started for the Dan Weldon Foundation, and the funds proceeds go to the Alzheimer's Association. But this year you've teamed up with the Wilson Family Fund.
Mm-hmm. Originally, the first year we did the karting event, all of the proceeds went to the Alzheimer's Association in the name of Sue Weldon, which was Dan's mother, who had early early onset Alzheimer's. So Sue, in Dan's behalf, wanted to set up a fund for Sue. So the entire proceeds of that event went to the Alzheimer's Association. Then the second year, Susie had decided to set up a foundation in Dan's name. The proceeds last year went to Alzheimer's Association and to the Dan Weldon Foundation. And this year, what we've decided to do is donate a portion of the proceeds to the Sue Weldon Fund at Alzheimer's and to the Justin Wilson Family Fund.
Now, I know that Susie is not making any or very few, if any, appearances, but she wanted to get involved the Wilson family because when she had her problem, Justin was there for her.
Absolutely. Justin, Julia, the entire racing family always reaches out when we have a tragedy or a problem or anything in racing. We are a small family, and I believe that Susie had thought this through and thought this was one way that she could pay it forward to the Wilson family, like many, many people helped her out in the beginning. So it's very heartwarming that that can happen.
Is her son going to be the pace cart this year again?
He absolutely is going to pace the race, as well as Dan's sister Holly and Dan's brother Austin Weldon. The three of them will pace the race, but Sebastian just did ask Susie, "Mommy, do you think it would be okay if I race this year in the race?" And she had to tell him no because you had to be 14. So he's trying to figure out how soon 14 can come.
How's he been doing? I know last year, his first year, he did quite well.
He actually did really well. He finished his series in Florida at Ocala third and was super excited that the trophy that he got was actually taller than he was. So that's amazing. And then last weekend was Sebastian's first race in the rain, and he ended up winning by a remarkable amount. So that was super exciting for them too.
It seems as though Susie was building a house. I assume it's done by now. That she gets out of that project, now she's going to kart races.
Yes, she will always go to kart races with Sebastian to support him for as long as he wants to do it. And in between this event, Susie is still sort of building her house and hopes to be in it right after the karting race is done.
Oh, it's not quite finished yet.
Not quite yet.
All right. Well, when I talked to her last year, it was no rush. It's proceeding along. How is there a lot of contributions that are made to the foundation during the year? Do you campaign or promote or something to raise funds all during the year, or is this it once this is it?
Well, currently, this is our largest fundraiser for the foundation. The foundation was just established in 2014, so getting the word out about the foundation is slower than, well, probably as slow as everybody can imagine when you start a foundation in the beginning. So as the word gets out, yes, people are donating checks, and they can always donate checks to the Dan Weldon Foundation. And it's located in St. Petersburg.
It's on Kroger Boulevard, I think it is.
1900 Kroger Boulevard, Suite 105, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33702.
Obviously, you've got that mentioned. I used to have it here and mention it all the time. When is Susie due in town?
Susie will actually arrive in town tonight, as well as Dan's youngest brother.
Mm-hmm. Is Holly here yet?
Holly will arrive on Thursday.
All right. And all of this takes place at Mark Dismore's Newcastle Motorsports Park.
What a wonderful facility Mark has there. It's amazing.
And to host the two big events that he has like that on a Saturday and Sunday, it's quite an effort.
We were so blessed that he fit the Dan Weldon Pro-Am Karting Challenge in on Saturday for us, because it is super busy for him. And there are hundreds of karters out there running the entire weekend. So even though maybe people feel like we're squeezed in there, we don't feel like we've been squeezed in there. We think that they give their time very generously to us. And the fact that we can run a 2-hour endurance in the middle of the chaos that he has going on is truly amazing. So we thank them very much for that.
All right, now go over quickly. The practice and qualifying starts at 10,
Yes.
and there's an autograph session.
Yes. Like I said earlier, each participant in the event gets a 20-minute session. It starts at 9:40, and that will conclude at 11:20, and then at 11:30 there's a pro autograph session in the behind the Racer's Grill, which everybody will know, and fingers crossed no rain, so we don't have to have it inside, and we'll have it outside. And they'll sign autographs for a half an hour, but not only during that autograph session, the drivers are so accessible to every single person that comes out there. Admission is free. If you actually wanted to purchase a $10 pit pass, you could purchase that through the Newcastle Motorsports Park and walk right beside, as close as Dawn and I are, to a driver that is more than willing to sign an autograph there, have a picture taken. They're way more accessible at this event than you will ever find them anywhere.
Now, one thing I got to ask you, and Mike's looking at his thing, so he won't be listening. How in the world did you get Scott Dixon to come out there?
Scott Dixon has been such a great supporter of this event from the beginning, and without going into details, but a lot of people know Scott and Dan were teammates at Chip Ganassi Racing. They were dear friends, and he would be the one person that comes first of all to say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? What media can I do for you?
And when Justin was at the hospital, the one who stayed the longest was Scott.
That's the kind of heart that Scott Dixon has.
Great guy.
Great guy.
All right, Saturday morning, the 19th, 10 o'clock.
Yes.
Starts qualifying. 11:30, an autograph session. What time did the racing start?
The race starts at 12:30 with driver introduction, and it's a 2-hour endurance. 2:30 it ends and goes directly into the podium, which the public is invited to come and see the podium, which is always a good time. And it will conclude somewhere around 3 o'clock.
All right, well, give our best to Susie, and hopefully a lot of you will go out there and see it, participate. Buy shirts. We got some here in case you need one. We got them here tonight, and along with a limited edition poster and the decals. So stop by and pick one up.
And as well as those shirts, at the event,
yes,
we also sell foundation shirts,
okay,
and we're doing hats, pins, T-shirts, and we have a limited edition item this year, which is a really cool winter scarf as we go into winter in Indianapolis. And again, all of the proceeds from the sale of all of the items that we have will go to the Wilson family.
Well, I apologize. I know that they got the Weldon Foundation shirts, and I forgot to mention that. By all means, get one of those as well.
Yes, and we actually have 3X this year.
What are you trying to say?
I heard you say you bought a 3X.
Yes, I did.
And they shrink.
That's what I'm hoping. Otherwise, I got a tent.
And we have 2X.
Oh, boy.
So you get your pick.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Melinda Hull with the
Thank you.
Dan Weldon Foundation Board. My other guest is here, and he'll be on his way up here. Meantime, tonight's show is presented by Sam Pierce Chevrolet in Daleville. Come to the country to see why the best prices are, in fact, in the country. And you'll also see why it is that Sam is always at the top or near the top for the customer satisfaction. Just take I-69 north to exit 34 and go south 1 mile. And you will find Sam Pierce Chevrolet. And you'll find if you buy a car from Sam, he doesn't stand behind you, he stands alongside of you. And you'll also find out why people buy cars from him all the time, and it goes from father to son to daughter to the whole family. Great guy. Great place to go. And don't forget, if you want a 2-seater ride, you can call 317-243-7171 extension 106, or go online to IndyRacingExperience.com. Find a date that you can live with, and when you call and make your reservation, mention Don Kay, and you get a 20% discount. That's the Indy Racing Experience, 317-243-7171, extension 106. And as I've mentioned many times, if you are a vintage car addict and like the old cars and some of the cars you used to see run when you were a kid, svra.com and click on to the subscription thing and get the Vintage Racing Quarterly. It is a top flight magazine, fantastic. You'll love it. Subscribe to it. You won't be sorry. And the next event on their schedule for the SVRA is the 18th to the 20th. It's upcoming. The San Diego Festival of Speed on Coronado North Island. And it's featuring the historic Trans Am cars, among others. It's the featured group. That's SVRA, September 18th to the 20th. The San Diego Festival of Speed, Coronado North Island. Featured group is historic Trans Am. Now, my guest is a gentleman that everyone has probably heard of, read about, all sorts of things. He is an orthopedic surgeon, and he has done things for injured drivers that were never thought of before. He is now into research and consulting, and I want to find out what's going on with the world of research. He is, without a doubt, one of the most sought-after orthopedic surgeons when you have a problem. Please welcome Dr. Terry Trammell.
Thank you.
Whatever got you into orthopedic surgery? I mean, you could have just taken blood pressure and pulse and...
You want the real story?
Yeah.
I went to Vanderbilt to be a biomedical engineer, biomechanical engineer. And about 3 years into the program, they said, oh, by the way, we don't really have a degree in that because it's too new. So you can either be a mechanical engineer or you can be a chemical engineer. So I said, well, I've got a whole lot of chemistry so far in 3 years. I'll just be a chemical engineer. And I was senior at that point, and I was doing research in the development of dialysis membranes in the chemical engineering building, and I thought I was going to go to work for DuPont. It was in Nashville. Went into the office of my mentor, who was my senior advisor, and he's packing his office up, and he's like leaving. And this was early, probably end of August, early September, my senior year. And I'm like, well, what's the problem here? Where are you going? What are you doing? He goes, well, about this biomedical engineering thing. He says, if you're going to work with doctors, I got to tell you something. They're the biggest assholes you'll ever be around. And if you want to talk to one and have them pay any attention to you, you better have MD behind your name. And I looked at him, I was like, and I'm supposed to do that how? He goes, well, run fast. So I took 2 semesters of biology with the freshman nurses in 1 semester to qualify for having the right stuff to go to medical school. And the rest is history. And the orthopedic surgery was the nearest thing I could find to engineering. It's just nuts and bolts. I mean, so.
I have been told that a lot of the surgery you have done, you're the first one to have done it. You question, can we not fix this rather than cut it off and throw it away?
Well, a lot of the stuff that I did, I borrowed ideas and techniques from other parts. And probably one of the most, one of the earliest and the most unusual was when Rick Mears got hurt and they wanted to amputate both feet. I got flown up to, he was in Montreal at the time, and had a little discussion about that, and we brought him back. And as soon as I got back, I called Jim Strickland, the hand surgeon. I said, what's the difference between a hand and a foot, except which end of the body it's on? I said, they got all about the same bones, and they do about the same things. Why can't I just treat a foot like a hand? And he goes, well, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but it should work, and it did. And long story short, we just did stuff that the hand surgeons had been doing for some years.
Well, the first thing that crossed my mind when you said, what's the difference between a hand and a foot, is the foot stinks.
Depends on where you put it.
Yeah. You have such a reputation that, unfortunately, when race drivers get hurt, almost anywhere in the world, they come to see you.
We've seen a few, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure some of them probably had to have a translator because you didn't understand what they were saying.
Remarkably, most of the drivers worldwide speak English pretty well.
Well, if they do well in Formula One, they interview them in English. So
right, exactly.
Was your goal when you went to medical school, you wanted to be a surgeon. You said, well, if I'm going to go, I might as well. It's the closest thing to engineering. Did you want to be a surgeon? Was that your plan?
Well, that was when I went to medical school. That was why I wanted to do something that was engineering related, and orthopedic surgery is applied mechanical engineering for the most part. Just bones have structure and properties just like any other material, and a lot of how they work is basic biomechanics. So yeah, that's what I intended to do. I didn't intend to be the trauma surgeon for the racetrack. That happened sort of accidentally.
Were you one of the originals when they started Ortho Indy?
Actually, it was number 8. There were five that started. It was Blackwell, Bruckman, Lassich, Hudson, and Irvine were the original 5.
It sounds like a legal firm.
Yeah, kind of. And several of us, Randolph, Stevens, and myself, came on pretty much in a row. But I was the baby in the original 8. And kind of how I got started in the trauma business, I actually was trained to be a deformity spine surgeon. I was going to operate, or did operate for the majority of my practice on deformed spines, on scoliosis and kids with horrible spinal deformities. That's what I really did for a living. But what happened is one afternoon, two things happened. First of all, one afternoon, one of the senior-most partners, Dr. Lassie, said, look out the window, and on the garage roof, parking garage roof across the way from us, they're painting a big white circle on the roof of the garage. I said, well, what's that all about? He said, well, that's for the helicopter that they just bought and the trauma service that you're in charge of now. And I was like, what? And he goes, well, you're the youngest guy on the bunch, and whoever's going to do this has got to do it every 4th night, every 4th weekend. So I did that for about 10 years. That was the first part.
Every 4th night, every 4th weekend. Well, that kind of limits your golf a little bit.
I didn't even know what a golf club was back then. And then the second part of that was I never really read my contract. It was just, I just didn't read it. And I knew that the tradition was that the low guy on the totem pole took holiday call for all the holidays for a year. And then it cycled back to the next highest guy up the ladder and go up and come back down. I said, okay, well, that's no big deal. Memorial Day's fine. There's no problem. So 1981. And my partner said, well, you don't understand. Race day is part of the holiday. And I said, that would be like 2 days in the same weekend that are a holiday. He said, well, yeah, that's how it works. I said, well, I can't do that. I have a job on race day. I'm taking pictures outside the 3rd turn. And he goes, well, not if you want to keep this job. So that day was when Dan Gaius plowed into the 3rd turn wall. And he was one of the first, well, I guess we're not going to throw these parts away, drivers. So that's how that got started.
And you actually got into the motorsports world almost by accident.
Literally. I mean, I was a fan, and I was there, but my next-door neighbor was a guy named Don Blake, and Don was a photographer predominantly at the Speedway for Valvoline, and that was my hobby, so I just would go along with him, and whatever he did, I'd do. I actually got $10 for a picture. I still have it in a frame. It was the only money I've ever made with a picture. So.
Wow, $10, huh?
I was impressed.
Yeah. You could probably sell that now for 25 or 30.
I doubt it.
Needless to say, over a period of time, there's been some very tragic happenings, and I'm aware that work is going on to try and eliminate. And I saw a video came out after Jules Bianchi passed away. And they had a video, and they showed his accident, and they said if he had this, he might have survived. And when I saw that piece of road equipment jump in the air, I'm thinking, I don't think that was going to happen. But they showed a canopy they're working on. They were hitting it with tires and all kinds of things. And I guess, I'm sure you're involved and know what's going on. So what is it they're looking at trying to do?
Well, This started actually when John Serraty's son was killed with a tire, hit him in the head. And there's a group in the FIA that started out as the expert advisory group. There was a handful of people that Sid Watkins pulled together to try and blend safety innovation with medical knowledge. And I was invited to be a part of that group. Well, that group evolved into what's now called the FIA Institute for Motorsports Science and Sustainability, and it's morphed into something called the Global Institute for Motorsports Science and Safety and Science. And that group has worked for years at looking at various protective mechanisms for an open cockpit car. And the issue is it still open cockpit when you enclose it? So trying to find some kind of enclosure or protection that doesn't turn it into a GTP car without fenders has been quite the task. And several things have to happen. First of all, it has to have enough energy absorption to stop whatever's thrown at it. You have to be able to see through it. And it can't deflect whatever hits it into the crowd, where you have a bigger problem than instead of one person at risk, you put a whole lot of people at risk. And very interestingly, in doing some research, one of the old-timers asked me, did I remember a guy named Bruce Walkup? And I said, kind of was before my time, but the name is familiar. He said, look up his number 97 car from 1970. It had a cage around the cockpit. So this isn't anything new. It's been around for a while. We just haven't evolved it into something that maintains the openness of the cockpit and still protects the driver. But we're working on it.
It occurred to me with that contraption, I remember seeing it. I think something got through and whacked Bruce in the head anyway.
I can't comment. I didn't know him. I may know of him, but
I know him. I saw something else show up on the internet. I think it was on an F1 car, if I'm not mistaken. It was a bar that came across the top and then a piece down the middle,
right.
A little narrow piece down the middle. It would seem to me that if you're putting a plastic piece that would be curved and the way the IndyCar is designed, I've never looked through plexiglass where you could see it. Kind of forms, but maybe they've got something new that I've never seen before.
Well, there are glasses that are clearer than plexiglass. There's always going to be some distortion if it's curved, but they've figured out how to manage a lot of that, they being the glass-making people. And we've been approached just recently by folks that make glass that think they can make it something. The problem is the weight. You have a tremendous amount of weight when you make it thick enough to protect against those kind of energies. And what we're talking about is probably just a little high school physics. If you take the speed of the car and turn it into meters per second and square that, so if about 100 miles an hour, I think, is about 90 meters. 155 miles an hour is 70 meters a second. So you square that, it's 70 times 70. So you start out with that number, multiply it times the weight of whatever you're throwing at it, divide that in half, and that's the force that you have to mitigate. So you have a 10-pound object that's going at, which is, I don't remember how many kilograms. 10 pounds is 4.85 kilograms, so about 5 kilograms. So 5 times whatever velocity squared. That's a lot of energy to get rid of. And when you talk about canopies, the canopy on an F-16 fighter will be penetrated by a 10-pound goose if it hits it at subsonic speed, takeoff speed, about 200 miles an hour. The pilots will tell you if they hit a bird, they have a bird strike in the canopy, it's going to kill them because it'll go right through the canopy. So if they can't do that to a fighter airplane, we're a little bit hamstrung with what our options are to protect the driver and still let you see him.
Now, having gone to engineering school, although not structural, something that has been in my mind, and I've been told by supposedly people that know it doesn't matter. It would seem to me, and the Speedway has this, the post, which is what caused Dan his problem, is on the track side. And at the Speedway, the post is on the outside. Now, it would seem to me if you've stretched this fence, though you hit it hard, generally when you hit it, you don't generally go straight into it. You slide along, and if it's outside the post, I would think you would slide and miss hitting the post. Now, I may be full of hooey, probably.
I have a thing in my contract that says I can't use the F word, and the F word's fence. So I have to walk around this a little bit. Let's just say that the fence designs have been based on tradition. They've come about because they're designed to keep the vehicle in the racetrack and out of the stands. And they do that reasonably well. Regardless of how they're constructed, the materials are such that they keep the race car in the track most of the time. They weren't really designed with protection of the driver in mind. That was sort of a more recent afterthought, that maybe the fence actually poses a threat to the driver. And for lots of reasons, that's being approached very timidly. And I don't know that any of those reasons are good reasons. It's just that's the fact. It's not been embraced with the vigor that, for example, the safer barrier was. They made a decision that needed to be, that running into concrete was a bad idea, and that we could have a better idea, and hence the safer barrier. For whatever reason, catch fences haven't been approached with that vigor or attitude.
I have noticed at the Speedway, and I don't recall seeing it anywhere else, and I've looked, that the Speedway has cables between the posts strung, so that even if you hit it, you don't go back where you're not likely to get caught up in the post, because the post is on the fan side anyway.
Yeah, most fences have cabling in them. They have to. That's what holds the fence up. It goes from an anchored bundle up through the posts, the whole length of the fence, and then periodically they come down and start over again, because you have to have that cabling to keep the car from going through the webbing. The webbing, whether it's chain link or some variation of the theme, is designed to keep the smaller parts from going through the fence. And there are multiple options. For example, COTA in Austin, Texas, has 3 different kinds of fencing depending on where on the racetrack it is. And the cabling is hidden inside the fabric of the fence. It still has cables, you just don't see it. But it's a whole different design than what you see around most oval tracks.
Have you had anything to do with the new mesh that's being put up at the Speedway? Have you been consulted on that?
No.
Oh. Well, then here's the question you probably can't answer. Are you able to explain the new mesh which is being installed at the Speedway? I assume we will still have cables in addition to the mesh completely around the track.
Yeah, I really don't know what they're putting in there. I've not been part of that.
I saw something the other day that they're putting, at least on the main straight and maybe in the turns, a black, smaller mesh that you supposedly can see through easier.
There was a group that addressed some options and possibilities that never made it off the ground, mostly because of financial backing. That one of the members of the group was an optical engineer. It's how you see through things, and it's a pretty well understood science about where you can put things in your eye line and still be able to see through them. The long story short is, if you go home and you've got Venetian blinds and they're horizontal and you open them, you don't see them. You see right through them because your eye can look through a horizontal member and it doesn't see it. If you make it vertical, if you've got vertical blinds at home that do this, you can't see out of them nearly as well as horizontal blinds. And that's kind of the theory behind some of the mesh sight lines.
How important a development was the safer barrier?
Oh, it's been huge. We've actually Henry Bach at the Speedway kept meticulous records of everything, and he could make a graph out of how many rabbits have been caught on the racetrack in the last 50 years. But he had all this. Well, he graphed the number of incidents that resulted in injury against the number of tracks with safer barriers. And when you hit 70% of the tracks with safer barriers, the injuries just went right down. And we still had them, but the frequency was way down. And so it's been a huge reducer of injury on an oval track.
And the sad part is I don't think Tony George gets the credit he should for pushing that through.
I think he paid for a lot of the R&D on that out of his pocket.
I'm sure he did. And there's a series that come along and supplied a couple cars that run into it, and they're trying to take the credit for what they did. When in fact Tony was the one who pushed and had Phil Casey out in Nebraska a lot. Has the barrier, I read somewhere recently that the barrier has actually made the racing a little more difficult, or a little, I don't know, more dangerous or something, because it's reduced the area that you have to race on.
Well, it narrows the track by about 40 inches, I think. Dave Brown, is that right? I think it's about 40 inches deep. It depends on the corner and the racetrack. It takes up some room, but I don't know that that's something that, I think if you ask our guys, would you rather have the 40 inches back, or would you rather have the safer barrier, there wouldn't be any argument.
Sure, I'm sure. It's occurred to me in watching, and I've been around this sport since the very late 50s, early 60s, that when a race driver gets hurt, they seem to recover faster than most. I mean, if I fell and broke my arm, I'm going to limp around for 6 months. Now, they're back in the car in 2 weeks. Do they recover quicker? Is there something mentally that says, I can't do that?
Part of what my reputation was made on was being able to get people back to the track, back into their race cars faster than customarily had been done or others were doing. And part of that was being able to supervise the recovery hands-on. And you can take a lot of the advanced orthopedic techniques for whatever is broken and push the envelope if you can control what the patient does pretty much 24/7. And in the first, from 80 to about 96, 81 to 96, almost everybody that got hurt that I operated on driver-wise went home with me. They lived at my house. And my wife was the taskmaster, and we'd make them a minute by minute, just like we made at the racetrack. This is what you got to do now, and they did it all day long, or they didn't stay. And if they were, in several cases, they had an extended family that we didn't have room for, so we'd put them in a apartment, a condo somewhere very close that I could stop by in the morning on the way to work and in the evening on the way home from work. And we were able to get them to do exactly what we wanted them to do at the rate that we wanted them to do it, and not any more than that. So we were able to push the envelope to get them to recover, which the other group of people that does that on their own are Indiana farmers. Probably farmers everywhere, but I've said for years, if all I had to take care of were race drivers and farmers, I'd have perfect results, because they just don't have bad results. They live with whatever they got.
The results that you've had from the work you've done is astounding. And I had James Hinchcliffe here last week, and of course it was known that had his accident occurred during the race, he might not have survived, because they might not have gotten to him quick enough. And he was bleeding severely, and was lucky to be here. And he said he's progressing well. He's got one more hurdle to get over before he's released to drive a car. Are you involved with him at all, or do you know what he's doing?
Ultimately, I'll be the one that makes a recommendation about his return to competition. I don't I'm not the one that makes the final decision. That actually would be Dr. Olinger, who's the medical director of the series. But I'm the information gatherer. I put all the pieces together and say yay or nay about just, it's my opinion, but whatever my opinion is, I usually go with.
I would have to bet Dr. O will listen to you.
Did he have the new safety device on, the big full beard?
Yeah.
That's to keep the buckle from cutting you under the chin when you crash. No.
Well, he had it a little bit trimmed, and I said, when I saw you at first, I thought maybe you hurt your arm too, so you couldn't shave. He said,
yeah, when we were at Pocono, it was quite full, and one of the guys cut his chin a little bit, and we said that would have stopped that. So.
For whatever reason, you have, your reputation worldwide is on race drivers, but do football players or anybody come to you, consult?
No, not really. I've seen a couple of them for various things, and I saw quite a few of them for a while, but it was for the insurance company and the players union when they were trying to be medicaled out of the thing and get paid.
Now, Bill Simpson was here earlier, and of course he's known to have built a helmet, and is building helmets now for football that are astounding. Is there a helmet that could prevent some of these? Now, Hinch got hit last year at the Grand Prix. It knocked him cold. I forget who it was. Formula One guy got hit with a spring.
Right, Massa.
Yeah, Massa. Is there possible to build a helmet that could withstand what Dan had, or what Justin got hurt with, killed with?
The issue is you can build a helmet that will resist penetration, that actually has a very strong shell, that will deflect a load that delivers a tremendous blow to the helmet. But what we think happens is that actually causes a shock wave that's transmitted through the helmet to your head. And there are currently some research things underway, predominantly military, looking at just that the helmet may resist damage from an impact, but it doesn't protect your head from the forces that it transmits through the helmet. So yes, the short answer is yes. You could build a helmet that would protect you. Could you carry it because it was so big? Or would it fit in the race car? Probably not to either. It'd be too heavy and too large. So we're kind of limited again. Let me back up a little bit. I'm sure you all know how big the hole is in an Indy car. And just as sort of a humorous example, I met Justin Wilson on the first day he came to Indianapolis, was going to drive for Eric Bachelard. And I get this phone call about 5, 6 o'clock at night, and I'm still in the office seeing patients. They said, could you come over and take a look? We've got this kid from England, and we're having a problem. I said, well, what would that problem be? He said, he won't fit in the car. We can't get him in a car. So I go over, they've got a Lola and a March, and they want to know which one should they buy to fit him in. And God love him, Justin was the most easygoing, get along with, do whatever you need me to do kind of thing, but the poor boy was trying to, it looked like a cartoon, trying to stuff him into the car and push him down far enough to get his head low enough that it was below the imaginary line from the roll bar, and keep his knees out of the steering wheel. And we fooled and fooled and fooled. I can't remember, we ended up buying a Lola or bought a Lola, right? We could get him in. But those cars are so small that was one of the things we did with 2012, with the Dallara 2012, was widen the entry into the car a little bit, but it's still not a whole lot longer. We don't have a lot more room for a tall driver to get down in the car.
When when I first met him, I looked up and I said, "You fit in these things?" Barely. Now, you have retired from Ortho Indy, although you may be up there
Kind
from
of.
time to time.
I'm no longer a partner. I'm an employee, and I go in periodically and punch the time clock when I'm there.
But you're doing research. What kind of research are you doing?
Well, most of it, I laughingly say I've gone from the repair business to the prevention business. So, starting in about 2005, Tony George hired me to be a consultant for driver safety and to try and collect information about things that were injurious or potentially so, that we could focus a little engineering research on and solve. And one of the first things was all the spine fractures that we were having. And it took a little longer than we thought it would to bring that number down considerably. Since, I hate to even say this because tomorrow something bad will happen, but since 2007 we have not fractured a driver's back going backwards into the fence. We haven't had a cervical fracture since about the same time, about 2007, and that was a young lady who didn't think she needed all the stuff that we put in the car to protect her. So she got a very minor fracture. The other fractures that we've had from Conway and Dario were hitting the bottom of the car on something hard, like a post. And that even has been helped dramatically. We haven't completely solved it. We're short about an inch of material.
Didn't Justin break his back at Mid-Ohio?
He did.
Bouncing off something?
He did, and was one of our crash test dummies for that phase of the research, because we could take the real-world data. That he and another driver did that at Mid-Ohio. And the ironic thing is the very next day, the driver that replaced him, who was considerably shorter and had all the padding in the bottom of the seat, took the same ride without any injury. So we know we can prevent them if we can get it all in the car, or we can lessen the likelihood.
Well, you could also, since you're a surgeon, cut part of the leg off and make them shorter.
That has been suggested, and actually, Professor Watkins, God rest his soul, that topic came up at one of the FIA meetings, and Mark Webber was one of he was the driver rep to this group, and he was complaining about the fit in the car, and looked at me and he said, "Dr. Trammell can solve that for you. How short would you like your legs to be?"
Interesting about Mark Webber, the first year that F1 came to town, they sent a driver in for media stuff, and it was Mark Webber, and nobody had a clue who he was. I mean, he was lucky he started races. I mean, he was really just an also-ran, but obviously it turned out once he got acclimated and got a good car, he was a hell of a driver.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting. I remember sitting talking to him, and he was so excited to talk to somebody about something, he came all this way to talk. So I sat and talked to him for quite a while. Is there such a thing as a safe race car? Now, I asked the drivers, do you feel safe in the DW12? And they said yes.
It has many features that make it probably the safest Indy car that we've ever had, or at least since I've been around. We have had the opportunity to fine-tune it, adding things to it to make the head surround better, the side impact protection better. So we've been able to gradually migrate through all that. I don't think that's
me.
Okay. And Dallara's been very willing to work with us. We've had a great relationship with an outfit called CAPE up in Westfield. CAPE stands for Center for Advanced Product Engineering, which is a euphemism for we get to crash buses and trucks and race cars and so on and so forth, and call it science. They have worked with us tirelessly to come up with fine-tuning details. And so the Dallara 12 has got all those add-ons, and we continue to add on to try and make it safer.
I was at Walt Disney World when Eliseo Salazar crashed in turn 1. and I heard him screaming. And our pit was right there, so I ran up along with a couple other guys and saw what happened. I said, "This isn't where I need to be." I turned around and left. But as a result of what happened to him and the piece of the suspension that went through his leg, they fixed that. They put some kind of a plate in
Put
and
a panel in it.
And it seemed to me that, I don't know if the new car had that, but essentially that's what happened to Hitch. Something came through and got him.
It did. And the car does. It has a Xylon panel that's built into it's actually in the structure of the car. Plus it had some other things that we added to it. Xylon has a weave to it. It's a material with a weave, and the piece basically spread the weave open and pushed its way through it because of the way that it hit and the forces that it hit with. And it's one of those things that it's kind of a perfect storm. But it also came about a little bit because the designers were concerned about the strength of the suspension, and there was some loss of history about why it had a part built into it that was not structural and didn't really cause a suspension to work any better, so they got rid of it. It happened to be the part that kept the suspension from penetrating the tub.
Now, in all the years that I've been following IndyCar, which is more than I hate to admit to, but I've never seen the nose cone of a car come sailing off. Why did the nose of Sage's car come off? Did they change the way it's mounted to the front of the car?
Well, that's a question that is being discussed right now. Part of the issue and part of the change, as you've observed, is the nose cone wing assemblies made to be easily removed and replaced, so that somebody dings a wing, they can pull in the pits and have it replaced inside 10 seconds and be back out again. The people who have been around for a while remember when wings they were on a piece, looked like a piece of pipe that went through the nose, and you didn't just pull the nose off and put a new wing on it. Plus it had fasteners all the way around it to hold the nose on. The current ones are made to come off, so they'll come off easily to be changed out. The fastener is strong, but the forces that act on it are a lot stronger. That particular nose cone tore part of the chassis off with it, so it didn't just fall off, but it's just to generate a tremendous amount of force at that speed.
And the odds against anybody being hit in that has got to be astronomical, and they were not in his favor.
No. Somebody seriously asked me, did I think the odds were higher that you'd get struck by lightning on the golf course? And I was on the golf course the other day in a lightning storm, and I thought, probably they were right, so I think I'm getting off the golf course.
Good thinking. Now, when I contacted you about doing this, you said, I'll have to get back to you because I'm traveling a lot. Are your travels, or is your travel to do with research on motorsports?
Yeah, some of it is, and some of it's just for fun.
Sure.
There's a movie, and I'm trying to think of the title, but it kind of fit that mold. Guy retires, and he decides he's retired. He must know what do you do when you're retired? You learn to play golf. Well, I picked up a golf club when I was a freshman in high school for phys ed, and that was the last time I picked one up until the summer that I retired. It's really hard to learn to play golf when you're 60-some years old and you've never done it before. So it takes up a lot of time. I'm spending a lot of time learning to do it.
You have heard, I'm sure if you've been out there enough, you've heard about the 19th hole.
I have.
I'm sure that a man of your stature, you don't participate in such nonsense.
Not when I'm local, which is part of the reason that I traveled. I played some really bad golf at some really nice places. So
nothing wrong with that, I guess.
Yeah, and it's easy to do the 19th hole then because you just stagger back to your room.
There you go. Well, I tell you what, I have said many times that I feel very honored to have people that are silly enough when I invite them to come on the program, they do it, and you're one of them. I am
My pleasure.
very appreciative of you taking the time and what you've done for people and some of the drivers that I've talked to that you've operated on. So without them, I wouldn't be standing walking here. And I think Davey Hamilton's one example. If you didn't know what happened to him, you'd never know anything happened.
No.
It's amazing. And he said, I can remember after I was being taken out of the car, there was talk of removal. He said, I not only have it, I can walk out, and he's back in the car. Was back in the car. I, for one, appreciate you taking the time to come here, and I always learn something. And it's ever changing. So, if you ever put your golf clubs down, somebody's likely to call you and say, hey, we got a problem we got to look at. And there you go again.
Well, they do. They call, and I come running. So
I have no doubt.
So,
I'm honored that you were here tonight. I
thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Dr. Terry Trammell. I want to remind you, if you haven't taken the opportunity, there is these, I don't look that good in them, but the Justin Wilson Badass t-shirt, they're available right here in the corner. They're $25. There is a tax, but that's the only thing anybody gets is a tax. The $25 goes to the Justin Wilson Family Fund. They have the decals, they're $5, and there is a limited edition poster. I think they have one or two left. They're $50. They are spectacular, but they're limited edition. So if you're interested, get in over there and get it. The money goes to a good cause, and I say the only thing they charge you is tax, and that's the only thing anybody else gets is the tax. Next week I have some invited guests. I haven't heard back yet if they're available. But again, watch Autosportradio.com website. Go to the current show page, and it will tell you who the guests are. And starting in October 1st, or actually the last program in September, we're no longer going to put archives on the website because they're on YouTube. So what we're got to do is, when this program is over, you'll be able to go right on the website and see the show that was just finished. It'll be on YouTube. We're going to take all the archives that we have sitting when we get the new website put together and a new host and put them all on YouTube. And YouTube makes you jump through a bunch of hoops to prove you're not selling something or whatever it is. But we'll put it all there so everything will be on YouTube. You just go to Autosport Radio Show on the YouTube, so hit the button and it'll come up. I want to thank everyone for being here, for showing up, for listening, watching. Until next week, as I say, watch Autosportradio.com, the current show. When I have new guests, they'll be there. Until next week, Don Kay saying thanks for watching, listen. Good night. And I want to thank Janine Smith and Kenny for getting their grandson out here, dragging him screaming out the door to bring the T-shirts, the posters. She got